Okay, friends, here we are to read chapter 16, Half Upon a Time. So remember the last couple of major events where that Jack got trapped in that giant's mouth, but then one of the evil queen's knights saved him, but remember he wasn't really there. And then May had met a prince named Philip, whose dad slays giants, and Philip killed the giant. So let's see what happens next. Jack, Philip called to him, politely waiting until his mouth was clear to speak. I quite forgot to mention something. While I was slaying the giant, a bag that I would hazard a guess to be yours fell from the sky and landed right at my feet, if you can believe such a thing. At that, he held up Jack's grandfather's bag. Jack nodded, not able to contain a dirty look. Right, he said. Sorry about that. I couldn't hold on to it while falling to my death. How completely rude of me. May I have it back? Of course, the prince said, tossing the bag over to Jack. The bag landed perfectly in Jack's hands, then dropped to the ground when Jack fumbled it. May laughed. Nice catch, she said. I've had a rough day, he replied moodily, grabbing the broomstick and stuffing it into the infinitely large bag. Not many men could live through a giant swallowing them, Princess, Philip said, as he carefully chose a piece of fruit from his sack. You have my respect, young Jack. Princess, Jack whispered to her, so you're only denying that to peasants now, huh? She actually blushed at that. Okay, she whispered back. I know it's stupid and ridiculous and all, but come on. You have to give me this. He's a real live prince. And besides, like you said, if Snow White's my grandmother, then I'm sort of royalty too, right? Of course, Jack said, but... Suddenly his face froze, his eyes widening. May, you didn't tell that idiot about your grandmother, did you? She snorted. I'm not stupid. I know I'm supposed to keep everything a secret. No, I just told him that I've got some royalty in the family. And quit judging me. I know I'm a posier. She smiled at that like it was a joke. I'm assuming that doesn't mean what I think it does, Jack said. His eyes narrowed to slits as he watched the prince daintily break off another piece of bread. This guy just irritates me. So he slays giants. Who doesn't? May started to say something snarky in reply, then stopped and looked at Jack closely. Jack, she said, are you... You are? You're jealous. She seemed shocked. He managed to pull up an equally shocked look. Jealous? Of what, a prince? You must have hit your head. Royals are completely self-absorbed and make life a nightmare for the rest of us. Have I been unclear about how much I dislike them? May gave him a suspicious look. Then you'd be okay if Philip and I go it alone from here? After all, if I've got a prince who can slay giants to help me, that's all I need, right? Jack rolled his eyes. Maybe, if you want to die horribly. Trust me, I'm not letting the two of you handle what's probably the most important rescue in history. May smiled, that little half-smile that Jack was beginning to despise. Whatever you say, hero, she said, then twirled around and lightly ran over to Philip, waving her hands delicately at her sides. She spun around when she reached the prince, curtsied to Jack, then sat down and stuck out her tongue. Jack never hated her more. Gradually, he forced himself to walk over to the two of them. So, he said to Philip, it's good that the giant fell forward, eh? Otherwise, he might have landed on us. You know, killing us all. That might have been bad, huh? The prince waited until he was done chewing, as Jack tapped his foot impatiently. No, he would not have fallen on us, the prince said finally. I do know what I am doing after all. But you are quite right. If he had landed on us, it might have ended badly. Yes, quite right, May said, imitating the prince. We might have been crushed into little gooey pancakes, which very well could have ruined tea. Do you mock me, princess? The prince asked, with a raised eyebrow and a gentle smile. Why would I do that when you're doing so well on your own? The princess replied sweetly. Jack eyed them both and sat down between them. I'm pretty sure there's enough mocking going on for everyone, he said. Let's all just scoot over and make some room here, all right? May started to respond, but something behind him caught her attention. Hey, Jack? She asked as she stared at whatever it was. He glared at her. What, your highness? So, where'd you get the sword? Jack threw a look over his shoulder. There, plain as day, was the hilt of the knight's sword sitting securely in the scabbard strapped to Jack's shoulder. What sword? Jack asked. The princess stared at him. Are we really going to play that game? Jack frowned. That sword? I got it inside of the giant. One of her eyebrows raised. Of course you did, she said. I take it there was a shop just behind his teeth then? Jack stared pointedly at the ground in front of him. Not exactly, he said. I found it. It probably got stuck in there, you know, in the giant's mouth, when he ate someone. That is quite a sword, young Jack, the prince said, leaning back to examine it. In fact, it looks almost familiar. Jack gritted his teeth. How old are you? He asked Philip. Pardon me, the prince said, leaning forward again. How old are you? Jack repeated. I am 15 years old, the prince replied. Then you're not much older than me, your highness, Jack growled. Can you try not calling me young Jack? The prince looked surprised. I meant no offense, my friend. Jack started to protest the friend part too, but May reached over and put a hand on his arm to calm him. He swallowed his comment and glared at them both. So how did you two find yourselves here? The prince asked, apparently oblivious to the hostility emanating from Jack. We're on our way to the Black Forest, May said, before Jack could elbow her to keep quiet. He elbowed her anyway, so she elbowed him back, a lot harder than necessary. The Black Forest? Philip asked, a look of concern crossing his face. That's hardly a place for a princess. It's a secret quest, Jack said dismissively. We can't really talk about it. We're looking for my grandmother, May said. Jack dropped his head into his hands. What part of secret quest were you not clear on? Whose grandmother is it? Jack threw her a dirty look. Exactly, May said, then turned back to Philip. My grandmother was kidnapped from my castle. I was taken too, but I escaped, and here we are. She told me to go to the Black Forest to find help, so that's where we're going. A worthy quest, Philip said, his eyes burning with passion. For such a goal, I cannot help but offer my full assistance. The prince paused, his eyes sparkling. That is, if you'll have me. Oh, we've already got too much assistance as it is, Jack started to say, but May quickly interrupted him. Of course we could use your help, she said. Jack seemed to have forgotten about the enormous guy chasing us. She smiled sweetly at Jack, which just made things worse, then turned back to the prince. Besides, you seem pretty useful, your princitude. I welcome the opportunity to exhibit more useful behavior, the prince said, bowing low at the waist. Jack rolled his eyes. No, seriously, we wouldn't want to take you away from whatever it is you're doing, he said. The prince shook his head. This giant is slain, and since I cannot return, since my only task is to avenge my father by slaying the giant who murdered him, I must seek out more giants. That means I may travel where I will and with whom I would. Maybe you just found that giant, Jack suggested hopefully, nodding toward the huge body in the distance. Maybe you're done now and can go home. Unfortunately, no, the prince said. I had a chance to converse with this giant over the last 5 days. He was not the one for whom I search. Yet you killed him anyway, Jack said. How noble of you. That thing ate you, May said to Jack, who just shrugged it off. All giants deserve death, Philip said matter-of-factly. The more I slay, the less there are to devastate the world. My quest only benefits mankind. That's nice of you, May said. Oh, come on, Jack said, but he had a difficult time being appropriately indignant, given that the giant had tried to eat him. So the Black Forest, eh? Philip said, though he didn't seem too enthused over the prospect. Do you know where it is? May asked him. Of course, he said expansively. It is no more than a day's travel from here. We should perhaps wait out the rest of the day here, then get a fresh start in the morning. Jack's stomach chose that moment to rumble loudly. May looked at Jack, then smiled at Philip. We're both a little hungry, she admitted. Say no more, the prince said, reaching for his travel bag. I never leave home without preparing. He untied the bag, then upended it over a blanket he set on the ground. Fruits of varying sizes and shapes tumbled from the sack as he shook it, all looking as fresh as they had been just picked from the tree or vine. Next came bread, followed by several round cheeses. It was as if the previously thin-looking bag was now overflowing with food. May's eyes widened. A magic food bag, she shouted, grabbing for an orange. Sweet. Ours is only magically roomy. The prince smiled with a royal smugness. Please, he said, eat all you can. The bag cannot be emptied. It was one of my father's rewards for his giant slaying. May tore into the orange, then proceeded to stuff her face with bread and cheese. Jack marveled for a brief moment at her feeding frenzy, then threw himself on the food with even more enthusiasm than the princess was showing. The prince seemed a little taken aback by the display in front of him, especially when half a peach landed on his shoe. May reached over to grab it back, glanced at the prince, blushed, and let it go. I see that you are quite hungry, the prince said, sounding a bit sick now. Yup, Jack responded, through a mouthful. We haven't eaten for a while. Oh, my friend, the prince said, shaking his head. How could you take this beautiful young woman out into the wilds without proper provisions? May looked up, her face covered with seeds and fruit juices. We haven't really slowed down enough to eat. The prince nodded. Such is a life at times. Still, anything that I have, consider it yours. May dropped a plum. That's so nice, she said, her eyes soft as she looked at him, purple juices running down her chin. I will do my best to live up to your trust, the prince said, for once not interested in staring at her. Do you know what we are looking for at the edge of the Black Forest? He said, moving his gaze to the sky. Jack and May both shook their heads. My grandmother just said there would be someone in the forest to help, May said, through a mouthful of tasty, deep brown bread. The prince raised an eyebrow. Someone in the forest? But that does not make sense, princess. Nothing lives within the Black Forest, and no man that travels into the accursed place emerges alive. Why, everyone knows that. That is the end of chapter 16. Check back for chapter 17 soon. See ya.